Hello and welcome to Safe Schools. I'm Curtis Graves with the Mobile Police Department.
Start with the school system here in Mobile.
Andy, we are talking about a very serious subject today. We're going to be talking about opioids and the crisis that we have in our country and the crisis that we have in our city as it relates to opioids. Right now our country is saying that this is one of our most major health crises to date, and that's pretty serious. That's up there with homicides. What we want to do today is talk about with two wonderful people who are here today to share information about opioids and the addictive properties that it has and the effects that it holds on the family or places on the family, especially children.
I'm just excited to have the opportunity to have guests like the ones we have today, because I think that they've gleaned from personal experience and professional education and opportunity to share with our audience and with us some important information about what's going on with this epidemic. And without delay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest today. We have with us Christy Wells. She's with the Drug Ed Council, and she's a drug ed specialist. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Christy.
Good morning.
And also with us is Mr. Benjamin Godwin. He's with the Wings of Life, and he's the program director there. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Benjamin.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. So happy you could make it because,
Yes,
again,
sir.
I called you last minute and said, hey, Benji, I need you to come out here and talk to us, man,
Yes, sir.
and just share some information with the public for us.
Yes,
So
sir.
thank you for coming out.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Christy,
Yes.
drug ed education specialist. How did you find yourself in this destination? Because it's a journey, it's a path. And what was your journey?
My journey, well, to back up, I had no intention of ever being a drug education specialist.
Okay.
Unfortunately and fortunately for me, I am in long-term recovery from opiate addiction and found myself in a lot of trouble with the legal system, with my family, with my own life, and after a very long road through the hell of addiction that I faced, after I got clean and looked around me, I was really taken aback at how many people struggle with this very same scenario that I had and don't know if they can get help, if they can find help, what to do, and I was too ashamed to ask for help before I ended up with all the issues that I ended with, and I ended as a convicted felon based on my behaviors associated with my addiction. So that all being said, I began to start looking into working with other people just like me, doing some service work and volunteering, which I still do, and then I found myself working with other addicts and alcoholics professionally also, and it's been probably the biggest blessing in my life.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Benjamin, what about yourself?
Well, I found myself in the same situation. I was an opioid addict, not just opioids, but any other drug I could get a hold of. I was addicted to, and I went to rehab to get help. And in the process of getting help, I seen the problems and the situations around me and decided, I wanted to give back. So I've also been clean for 12 years and just enjoying life.
Congratulations.
Being able to help other people see that there is another way, that there is another opportunity in life, that to get help.
I want to share some facts with you guys. I did a little research on opioids. It helps to know a little bit about what you're about to talk about, right? I've never had an addiction to anything, but I'll say this. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, 756 people in Alabama died from drug overdose in 2016. That's in 2016, 756 people. The number of overdose deaths in Alabama were 212 times higher, or 212 higher deaths than the number of homicides we had in Alabama in 2016. And 290 deaths less than the number of firearm-related deaths that we had in our state. Those are high numbers. Those are numbers to be concerned about because there's a ripple effect that occurs with that when someone dies. The devastation that comes from behind that with those who are left behind. And we want to talk about that a little bit too, but we want to talk more about what is an opioid. Either one of you can
I'll
actually
jump
take
in.
that.
Why not? An opioid is, in common language, it's a painkiller. That's what we call it. But it's different in that it does have very, very addictive properties and can do a lot of damage. It's very quickly addictive also. A lot of people become addicted to opioids through just basic medical needs and such, which is how mine occurred in the beginning. But opiates also they include drugs like heroin, they include drugs like Norco and Lortab and all those things that we're all familiar with.
It's pretty startling, Andy and everyone else, that I read somewhere that it takes a doctor all but 15 minutes to assess your acute and chronic needs for treatment and to prescribe an opioid. That's all it takes. But what it leaves behind is a lifelong addiction in a lot of cases, as we look at the numbers that reflect the number of people who have died from opioids.
So it's certainly important that this conversation and many other conversations need to bring clarity to the reality, I guess, that when you're in pain, that's significant. How you deal with that pain and how you get treated for that pain, if it ends up making your life and your circumstance worse, they need to know that. So you all experience these things of going through these difficulties, but I think the uniqueness of why you all are here today is because you took that experience and decided to make a difference in helping other people. And in the course of you trying to help other people, I think it's hugely important that, we talk today about, how we get from where we are as a community with this drug addiction and this crisis that we're in to what do we do next. Ben, what can you say to that, man? What are you guys doing at the Wings of Life, and what could you share with our audience about that?
Well, what we do at the Wings of Life, we are a faith-based program, so we believe in the power of Jesus Christ and the delivering power of Jesus, and that's what we do. We teach the Bible, we teach them how to have new life in Jesus and how to overcome that struggle, to overcome that past life, and to receive forgiveness, and not only to help their life, but to help their family's life, because as you said, it does affect the family, it affects the kids, and it doesn't just affect them. So we're very family oriented to try to help the whole family, to bring the whole family together, because it is a crisis. And as I was telling Mr. Curtis Graves, that here recently we've seen a lot of heroin addiction, a lot of heroin come in, and a lot of people who are struggling with not only the opioids as far as the pills, but they're struggling with heroin as well. And they're just, as you said too, that they don't know how to get help. They don't know where to get help from. And you really have to get out of that lifestyle and into a safe place, if you will, to be able to get away from that, to get away from the struggle of the world, I guess you could say, and to be able to focus. Because when you're in that life and you're doing the drugs, you're cloudy. You can't think for yourself. You can't think properly, and so it messes your mind up. It messes your activities up, and just to get a little clarity, get a little understanding.
And Benjamin, what we're going to do, we're going to actually, after this commercial break, we're going to get a little deeper into that conversation, okay?
Yes, sir.
We'll be right back.
It's a fact. Bullying happens. Bullying can lead to serious physical and emotional pain, but there are some things you can do to prevent or stop it. Stand up for the person who's being bullied. Let the bully know that it's not cool to pick on others. Take action by reporting the bully to a teacher or principal. In the end, when you help someone who's being bullied, you're also helping yourself.
Hey, and we're back. Benjamin, we want to talk a little bit more about the physical and the emotional effects of opioids and what effects that it not only have on the person who is dealing with the disorder or the addiction, but also those around them, because we know with everything's connected, everything's interconnected. What happens on one end has an adverse effect on the other end, as it relates to our children, as it relates to our parents, as it relates to our entire community. So we want to talk about that a little bit and talk about the effects of it and what you've seen.
Well, what we've seen is the effects that it does to the kids. If the parents are on drugs, the kids they're left at home alone. They're not there. No one's there to take care of them. No one's there to help them with schoolwork, to help them to teach them how to grow up. The parents are out running the roads and running around trying to get that next fix, trying to get that next high. And then if it's someone's child who's going through it, the parents of that child are struggling trying to fix the child, but they don't know what to do. They don't know how to act. They don't know how to help because they feel helpless.
And I talk to parents all the time, and I've talked to men who especially go through addiction through the fatherhood program. And I know that they hurt. They hurt from because they know the damage that they're causing.
Right.
But addiction has such a strong hold on people as it relates to narcotics, especially, that it makes you do things that you know are wrong, and you see the devastation that it has on your family, but you feel like you're powerless.
Right.
And we want to talk about how quickly can someone become addicted?
Kristen?
In my case, mine began with a very serious back injury, and a very legitimate prescription was given to me for pain relievers. And so for a very short time, because I can tell you when I took my first pill and put it in my mouth and swallowed it and waited maybe 15 minutes until we called it kicked in, but I didn't know that at the time. When the minute that it had time to work on my body, yes, it helped the physical pain, but it also made me feel better all the way around than I had ever felt before or since. And I was addicted immediately. I did not realize it for a while, but it was it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks until, first of all, my tolerance built up, and one pill wouldn't do anything, and so I would take 2 at a time, and then 3 at a time, and 6 at a time, until after about 11 years of full-blown addiction, my requirement to avoid withdrawal, no more happiness, just to avoid withdrawal, I was taking 70 Lortab 10s every single day of my life.
So what does that mean when you say withdrawal? I mean, how does that dynamic express itself in your life?
It's probably the most horrific, frightening, sickest point I've certainly ever known, including any illnesses or accidents I've ever had. It involves things like chills and hot flashes, sweating, vomiting, extreme diarrhea, weakness, confusion, and the saddest part of it all is extreme depression, which often leads to attempting suicide, which is what actually happened with me. I felt that my 3 children, who had been raised by me in an environment living with a drug addict like me, I thought that they would be better off without me as their mother, and I thought they deserved a better mother, and they did. But the answer certainly wasn't suicide, but I made a very concerted effort to take myself out, and thankfully to God, I'm not gone, and I'm still here doing what I think I've been left here on earth to do.
There's been a lot of conversation too about what's the difference between an opioid and someone using other drugs that are not legal drugs, i.e. crack cocaine or cocaine. The difference is that this was deemed a legal substance. And opioids came on the scene back in the 90s, the late 90s. under a very aggressive marketing campaign by a leading pharmaceutical company that promoted the widespread use of opioids for the treatment of acute and chronic pain. And in 2007, this leading pharmaceutical company was found guilty in federal court for falsely reporting that less than 1% of patients prescribed opioids would become addicted. And that was not true. And the damaging thing was that they knew that. They knew it all along, but they yield to doing what they did for the sake of profit over well-being. And that's the difference. That's the difference, I believe. And some may argue against that, but I believe that that is the difference because, again, this was brought to people, to the marketplace, as a way to relieve people of acute and chronic pain.
Krista, you said that in the intro, you ended up getting in trouble.
Yes.
So in that opioids are prescribed medications, you received yours initially through prescriptions from a doctor for a legitimate reason. How did you end up getting in trouble?
Well, basically, it's kind of simple. When I was written the medication, pretty much the maximum dose was, maybe 10 milligrams every 4 to 6 hours. Because I couldn't keep to that dose at all, that would be a maximum of just a few pills a day, and I required 70. So no doctors in the world are going to write me 70, pills a day.
Right.
I went to several doctors back then, though, and was doctor shopping, and back then it wasn't as regulated as it is now. But with that being said, I required 70 a day, and I decided to commit crimes to get them. I started out by finding myself a dope dealer, and that was nothing I'd ever been exposed to. And I found out that there's some areas that you can pretty much approach and find some quickly. What really got me in the most trouble was that because of the cost of buying them on the street, which is about, I think I may be right, I think it's between $7 and $10 a pill now, and it was back then too. And it was so expensive, I couldn't keep it up. So then I moved into prescription forgery. And so I went to doctors' offices, stole their prescription pads, or I also knew how to call the drug in, and back then you could call in opiates, and now you cannot, which is probably a great advantage. But I began to do that, and I got by with it for a really long time. But it was a terrible, terrible thing to do, and I ended up being charged with prescription forgery, possession of controlled substances, and all kinds of other things. So.
And the whole purpose of this show is to talk about these things that people oftentimes don't talk about. Families don't like talking about what they're dealing with as it relates to these things. This is an opportunity for people to hear your testimony and talk about how you overcame, how you continue to overcome dealing with this issue. There are several different types of opioids, right? You have your hydrocodone, right? What are some of the street names for those? We want to educate parents a little bit too. I know I'm looking at hydro, narco, and Vikes. Those names sound familiar to you guys at all?
You probably got some more, don't you? Probably do.
But their brand names are Vicodin and Lorcet. But that's not the only thing. You have others. You have some that are even more addictive, right, than others.
Yes.
And you have your hydrocodone. Those street names can be Kicker, Oxycontin, and Hillbilly Heroin. That threw me for a loop. That really threw me for a loop. But a lot, and we'll get back to more of this after this commercial break, but a lot to talk about.
Yes.
I'm Mac McElroy, and I'm a junior here at Baker High School. My future plans after I graduate high school are to go to Auburn University and get a mechanical engineering degree. And taking the AP courses could help me get credits to decrease the amount of time I had to be in college. Baker High School has prepared me for college, career, and life readiness by allowing me to participate in these clubs and classes that I'm taking now.
Hey, and we're back. We were talking about opioids and what they do to you. I'd like to have an opportunity for you all to kind of articulate for our audience what is the difference between an opioid and heroin, and how do they connect, and what are they doing to people?
Well, there is no difference, actually.
Okay.
Heroin is an opioid. It used to be used many, many moons ago medicinally for people. And now it's simply a step up, so to speak, or down, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But it's the end result of someone, perhaps like I was, taking 70 pills a day and paying street value for them. First of all, heroin is cheap, very, very cheap. And buying, like we talked about, pills on the street is very expensive. And the high from heroin lasts longer. It's very easy to come by now. And unfortunately, it's killing people now, both from just a strictly overdose from heroin and dying, and also from the heroin being laced with a drug called fentanyl. And that is an instant death most of the time. Fentanyl's very cheap, and people get it and mix it in rather than, and all the ingredients are not good there, but it's like one of the most appalling and effective opiates that there is.
So it intensifies the effect or something? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, it just gives the effect.
Well,
It's very
fentanyl,
strong.
I did a little research on it.
Yeah.
And fentanyl is similar to morphine, and it's 50 to 100 times more potent.
Yes.
I guess that's a way to sum it up.
It is.
So, and there are a lot of different street names. I won't even try to pronounce some of the names, prescription names. I won't even fool with that, but I will call out the street names.
Okay.
Apache, China Girl, China White, Dance Fever, Goodfellas, Tango, and Cash. And this came from a website, a very reputable website called Overdose. And we'll show the website for our viewers a little bit later so that they can actually do their own research. Because it's so important for us not to ignore these things and to educate ourselves where we can so that we can be of help to others. So especially our children. Our children are dying from drug overdoses. It happens all across America. It happens in classrooms from a friend who brings their grandmother's medication or their mom's medication to school. And for kicks and giggles, they share medication. They may put it in a bottle, a drink bottle, soda, or whatever, but children are dying. And we want to talk deeply about that because those are important things. Our children are our most important investment, and we need to make sure that they understand that our investment in them is that we keep them away from things that harm them. So, but Benjamin, what can you tell us about some of your experiences as it relates to some of these?
From my experience, I was hooked on opioids, and as I was saying earlier, that heroin wasn't that big around Mobile County and Baldwin County, but now it's becoming an issue, and it's around a lot more. It's more easy to get. It's cheaper. And if you do have an addiction that's costing you a couple $100s a day, you could just go get some heroin for cheaper. And the problem is, as she was saying, that they're cutting it with fentanyl, and they think that they could do the same dose they did yesterday, today, and what's happening is they're overdosing, it's killing them, and they're not good. It's not good for them. It's not good for the streets, and people are moving from the opioids as far as prescription drugs to the heroin because it's cheaper, it's easier to get a hold of.
And at the Wings of Life, you guys see hundreds of people every year. What are some of the most primary reasons for the need to come to the Wings?
Opioid addiction is a major problem right now in the Mobile County and surrounding areas, and we see them. They start with the pills, and now we're having a lot of people who are coming in who are coming off of heroin. Like when I came to the Wings of Life, I was coming off of methadone, and I wasn't even allowed to come into the program because they were scared of me detoxing. They didn't want to get in any trouble or anything like that. That was 12 years ago, but now we have people who are coming in off of heroin, and we have to do what we can do and send them to the hospital, get the help that they can get, but it's a difficult thing to come off of. Your body aches and all kinds of symptoms.
The thing that people should know is that if you guys weren't sharing this information, no one would ever know it. Okay, that's the same as someone who's on it. When they start, you'll never know it. It's that mom who's dropping off her child for soccer practice, or dad picking up his son from baseball practice. People people who every day are just trying to find ways of dealing with some type of pain that they have, and they're being prescribed medications that have addictive properties that they cannot control.
So there was this plant called a poppy plant.
Yes.
And so from the poppy plant, they came up with a substance, opium. And from that opium substance, one of the byproducts that they produced was heroin. And then they treated pain now with what we call in this country narcotics, other parts of the world call opioids. And now we're discussing them as opioids. It's been around a long time. It's done a lot of harm. You talked earlier, Christy, about how you were able to shop prescriptions and shop doctors, and now that those things are more strictly regulated, you know, this goes to that part you were talking about, Benjamin, about now, since the regulations are greater and it's harder to get the medications, getting into heroin seems to be that next step, huh? And getting with that next step of heroin, unlike prescription medications that have some more determined effects, it's harder to assess how much heroin will kill you and how quickly will it happen.
Well, and I can say, as being a past treatment provider also at a men's facility here locally, we had a lot of people also who came in with opiate addictions, whether it was heroin or the pills and all that sort of thing. And one thing that happens that kills people quickly is once they leave rehab, they've been there for, in our program it was 4 months, and plus some if needed, and they would leave and relapse and go and take the same dose of whether it be pills or the heroin, and then they drop dead. And
that's the most important
the saddest
point.
thing.
That is it. You'll die from this stuff.
Well,
thank you all. This has been a great show, and we have learned a great deal today. Thanks for being on Safe Schools.